as a community, we look at the word trauma as one of those hush-hush words.
Come in fall 2023.
It's a stigma around that word. Like, nobody wants to be labeled or be classified under that.
Angela Marie Publishing proudly presents.
If you look at it, trauma is merely just being exposed, or voluntarily or involuntarily, to a situation that changes your outlook.
Sit in your shit. A 30-day guided journal for processing a crisis.
You have become accustomed and immune to your own shit.
Written by Miss Devin Elise, certified life coach and founder of Lifted KC.
Because mental health doesn't care where you are, what you're doing, who you are. It's going to kick in when it want to kick in.
Fall 2023. Sit in your shit.
When it finds its place to trigger you, boom, you're triggered. If you don't deal with the trauma, you're going to constantly be triggered.
The highly anticipated guided journal from Kansas City's own Devin Elise.
And one of the things that I'm learning in my associates with this healing is to be aware and to sit in my shit.
For more information, visit AngelaMariePublishing.com.
When I feel something, I sit there and figure it out. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling? Because when I can identify it, the next go round, I can prevent it before it comes.
Sit in your shit. Pre-orders available now.
To all my brothers, all my sisters, to any and everyone tuning in and trying to navigate this thing called life. Whether you've been following this healing movement from the jump, or you're brand new to the family and tapping in for the first time, welcome. Welcome. You are absolutely welcome. This is the Blacked Out Couch Podcast. But we like to think of this as more of a safe space for decompressing instead of your typical pod. The purpose of this show is to encourage and promote mental health awareness in our communities. For decades, the mere idea of addressing trauma and healing has always been taboo in the Black culture. We are hoping to change that narrative, one day at a time, one conversation at a time. Now, keep in mind, although we do believe wholeheartedly that the keys to an intentional healing journey include support groups such as these, as well as a variety of other ways to cope, in no way, shape, or form is this show intended to be a replacement or substitute for professional treatment of your mental health needs. We want to encourage, uplift, and provide our audience with tools and resources that have helped some of us maneuver in our day-to-day routines. While some of our panelists do have experience and specialize in the mental health industry, we are all everyday people trying to get by, just like you. So always remember, no matter what you may be going through, you are not alone. It's going to take plenty of courage to see this thing through. But I have faith in us, ladies and gentlemen. Again, welcome everyone. I hope we heal.
All right. Welcome back to all of my brothers, all of my sisters, my aunties, my uncles, my cousins, everybody out there tuning in, man. Welcome back. You are tuned in to the Blacked Out Couch Podcast, and we are at episode 7, ladies and gentlemen. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. you know what, man, while I'm thinking about it, shout out to my man G-Don on the slap for providing us with the soundtrack, the background music that you hear episode in and episode out. Not only is G-Don one of our sponsors and on our panel, but he's an up-and-coming producer, man. So make sure you check him out for all you artists, all you content creators out there. Check him out, man, because he definitely got those slappers on deck, man. And we appreciate you, G-Don, for all that you do for this podcast and helping bring this thing to life. You know what else, man? I want to give a major shout out, as always, to the Sisters panel. You know, they last episode focused on nurturing with trauma from the aspect of motherhood. And man, you know, they came with it. If you haven't had a chance to check out their last episode, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and all of the podcast streaming apps. I do got to say, I think it's been amazing how our talking points have been complementing each other real organically. And I just want to give everybody that's been involved in this journey their flowers for having the courage and the passion to take these steps with us. Tonight's episode is titled, How Do Boys Become Men? And I'm expecting the dialogue to be a continuation of the themes that we talked about in our last session on broken homes and generational curses with the brothers panel. So we got a hell of a show lined up for y'all tonight. I'm super excited about the group of brothers joining the couch. We got some familiar faces, some faces that we haven't seen in a while. But you know, I'm really excited about getting this thing started. So let's all just take a deep breath, get ready to take these masks off and take these gloves off and dive in. Couple of new, at least one new brother on the couch with us tonight. But before we get started, man, I do want to say that our thoughts and our prayers are with brother Game Type Mike, who's grieving right now. You know, he lost his father recently, man. So just want to lift that brother up in spirit, man. You know, grieving is tough for all of us, man. And we definitely, man, got you in our thoughts and prayers. So shout out to Game Type Mike, who couldn't be with us tonight. Sure. So let's go ahead and dive right into it then, fellas. We got a new brother on the couch tonight. So Dr. Brian Roper is on the couch with us tonight for episode 7. And, you know, Brother Roper, what we do is we do a temperature check, right? We want you to introduce yourself. And then right after that, let us know how your mental health and your mental well-being is doing on a scale of 1 to 10. So, Dr. Brian Roper, why don't you go ahead and tell the people who you are, what inspires you, what brought you to the couch tonight?
All right. So he told you my name is Dr. Brian Roper. What really inspires me and what brings me to the couch is these conversations about what black man conversation. You know, it's a beautiful conversation. Just to see where we're at as men along the road. My passion, of course, is criminal justice and reintegration and making sure people get a fair chance after release. My mental health, man, I'm about an 8. Just, you know, would be a little higher, but the electricity was off for a couple of days, so I'm just bouncing back from that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool, man. Well, welcome, bro. We appreciate you tapping in with us tonight, man. So you was caught up in all of that thunderstorming and all of that stuff that happened with all the power being out up in the town.
Yeah, our power was out for like 2.5 days.
Yeah, that's got to be tough, man. That's got to be tough. Well, man, look, I appreciate you. Look like you back up and running now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, right on, man. We appreciate you joining us tonight, man, to have this dialogue, man, and just to unpack and decompress with us just as black man. So, man, let's go down the line, man. Let's get a temperature check from everybody then. Who else we got on the couch? Brother G-Don, what's going on with you, brother? How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good, man. Like I say every time, fellas, all the listeners, sometimes you need to quit being a bitch and go to therapy. Sometimes you need to go get you some skills, need to get you some understanding. Just because you're doing all right don't mean you're going to be all right tomorrow. Just because you made it this far don't mean there ain't some new skills and new understanding you can get in order to make sure you continue to push forward and elevate. I've been in therapy, you know, about 5 years myself. You know, we got therapists on the panel. Go get you some help, brother. And if you don't need help, go get you some assistance. And if you don't need assistance, go get you some knowledge. Because you can't have too much of that.
No doubt, bro. We appreciate it. So did you give us your temperature check though? I don't know if I heard that part. We got to check in on you, brother.
My bad.
What's your temperature check right now?
I'm about a 7-8. You know.
Okay.
Life's been life in this year. You know.
Yeah.
But God's been slowly but surely turning it around. When we did our first episode, and you asked my temperature check, and I gave like a 2 or a 3. That's because I had just got fired 4. I had just got fired that day. And so literally since then, because my primary function, you know, is in health insurance. So I ended up you know, studying, getting an additional license in life insurance. I'm doing life insurance now. And you know, things falling into place. Started the new gig. Thinking about changing locations. You know,
like out of Kansas City.
Nah. Just you know, maybe jumping sides of the river. You know, I'm on the Kansas side now, so maybe jumping to the Missouri side or something like that.
I got you.
But you know, I'm not. You know, I'm coming around the bend. I'm about past the halfway point. You know what I'm saying? Because literally, when I say life hit me, I got fired, and then my engine went out in my car like 2 days later. So when this nigga say you got hit, nigga got hit. You know. But that's life though. And I kept going to therapy. You know what I'm saying? Stayed prayed up, fasting and praying. And, you know, just keep on keeping up. So right now, I'm about to like a 7 or 8 because, you know, God is good.
Man, amen to that. Man, you know, I think that's remarkable, man, that you know, that you was doing all of that and carrying all of that on your shoulders, man, because I didn't know it was like that, man. I thought maybe, you know, you spilled your coffee on the way to work or something. When you said you was at a 4 that day, man. But man, I definitely, man, I want to give you kudos, man, and you know, big you up, man, for that, man, just because, you know, like you said, man, you handled it. You continue to seek out the therapy and the help. Which is our number one goal, man, with everything that we've been doing, man. That's how me and you connected, man. I love every time, man. I love every time that you say that, man, because it just remind me of when we connected on Clubhouse, man, and you came in and hit the room with that. And man, that blew me away, man. And you live by that, man. It's not like you just talking. So man, right on, man. Welcome, bro, again, back to the couch with us. But man, that's crazy, man, that you was dealing with all that. And you know, it's some like you know, you a testament to it, man. Like Brother G-Don said, you know, if you stay strong and you keep on, life is gonna life. But you know, I heard a while back, man, somebody said, you know, life's been lifing, but thank God it ain't been deathing, right? You know, we still here. We still have a chance to try to make things right, man. And so you don't want to let your circumstances get the best of you. Trust me, man, it's hard for all of us. You know, all of us have those down times, man, but you serve as an inspiration for I think all of us right now, man, just to know that that's what you was going through, and you look like you seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right on, bro. Right on. Who else we got on the couch? Brother JB, can you hear us? What's going on with you? Give me a temperature check, baby.
What's going on, fam? I am a good 8 or 9 right now. Not too much to complain about. Got some good things going on with the family, so pretty happy guy.
Right on, man. Right on. Good to hear that, man. Who else we got? Brother Marcus, Pastor. What's going on with you tonight, brother? Uh-oh. I don't think I can hear you. If you're trying to talk to us, brother Freeman, might have some mic issues. We'll circle back on that. Then brother Rogers, what's going on, man? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. How y'all doing? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm sitting at about probably about a 6.5, 7. Like it's near the week, and it's been just a hefty amount of client load, and just yeah. At this point, like clinically, I'm like, man, I'm tired. Like I'm tired, and I'm trying to gotta make sure up to self-care for the rest of the week. Luckily, I'm on a downhill slope for the volume of clients I see. So making sure I take care of myself, and making sure that I get the adequate amount of rest. Sometimes 5-year-olds don't like to wake up at normal time. Sometimes they wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. They have Pop-Tarts immediately. And
I hear that. Yeah. Well, man, look, man, it's good to have you back, man.
It's good to be back.
For sure, man. It's been rough for myself too, man. I'm gonna put myself at about a 5 for tonight. So that's kind of the middle ground. I'm not doing as bad as I could be doing, and I'm not doing as good as I could be doing. So life is about balance, man. And I'm glad that we gathered here tonight, man, just to have some dialogue, to do what we do, man, to decompress, to unpack, just to share each other's energy, man. That's what got me at a 5, I think, versus a 3. So I appreciate everybody that joined us tonight, man. Tonight, man, is episode 7. So another congratulations to everybody, man, that's been sticking through with this thing, man. We made it to episode 7. So we nearing towards the end of this first season. But tonight's episode is sort of a piggyback, a continuation. Like I was saying earlier, it's a continuation of what we talked about in the last episode. The last episode, we spoke about broken homes, generational curses. We talked about the impacts, the effects of the absence of the Black man. So one of the things that was brought up in that last episode was how, the sins of the father oftentimes fall on the sons. And it becomes an even greater feat for that young boy to overcome when the father is absent. If the father has some sins or some issues that he may not have been able to confront with himself, how could he have handed that down to his youth, to his offspring, right? And so that's kind of where the inspiration for tonight's conversation comes into play, which is episode 7 is going to be, how do our boys become man? So I think tonight's episode is going to be about a lot of accountability, confronting ourselves, and man, I just want to dive right into it. So I got some questions here. The first question is actually what I just talked about, confronting our failures. Let's list or discuss some failures as a Black man, either common or personal, however, whatever direction you want to take it in. Let's list some failures that we want to see a change in with our youth. Let's just dive right into it.
Ooh, we got one. In terms of being as a failure amongst us men, it's calling each other nigga. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna let y'all eat on that one.
Okay. All right, hold on. Wait a minute. You just gonna say that and drop back out, JB? Okay.
Hey. Okay. So personally, Holly, you know me. I've been striving and pretty much succeeding. I don't use that word anymore. Like it's very rare if you hear that come out of my mouth now, and it's typically because I'm extremely angry now. But I'm not gonna say what I think of it. I want to hear what y'all got to say about it.
Okay. I'm listening. I'm playing moderator right now, so I'm passing the mic to everybody else. I don't know. I didn't talk too much, so I'm gonna go last every single time tonight. So who else want to chime in on that? That was a heavy one right there, JB.
Yeah, that's a heavy one. I mean, it's split. It's gonna be split. So I'll be sure, brother, not to ever address you with that word. You know, I'm all about respect.
Oh, I'll tell you what though. I don't get offended if people use that term towards me though, you know, because I understand where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. But I mean, you know, honestly,
I'm trying my best to hold off.
Yeah,
I'm trying my best to hold off.
It's the small things that matter, you know. So, or you know, small things can add up.
So, I'll give you a higher overview of it, and one of the reasons why I feel this way. That monetizes the devaluation. We monetize the killing of ourselves. We monetize the drug addiction in ourselves. And then we allow other cultures to monetize off of us.
With the hip hop. Sound like you speaking on like the hip hop aspect of it.
Yeah, we can absolutely use hip hop because that's prevalent in terms of the type of music that's popular and the type of music that gets airplay. And then think about, even though you have a performer, who's controlling that music? Who's you know, that artist isn't controlling what's coming out, bro. The artist isn't controlling what's being played on the radio. Black death is money. Period. And we allow it.
All of this from the use of the word nigga.
So that's why I decided to give you the high overview of why I started to think that way about that word.
Now for the sake of the conversation, let me give my disclaimer. I do not agree nor disagree with the brother, but for the sake of the conversation, I'm willing to be devil's advocate. All right.
Okay.
And
come on.
In my counter to that, I would say that we as a people have always turned trash into treasure. That's who we are. That's what we do. And in small ways, in our food, in the neighborhoods that they, you know, relegated us to, you know, before they came in and dropped bombs on them and gentrified them, we turned them into economic hubs. So we've always turned trash into treasure. So to be like, oh, we should do away with that is one thing to say, okay, we need to focus more on getting the treasure and turning that treasure into a gold mine. Absolutely, we should do that. But to just say we should stop altogether for one reason or another, that's a far stretch.
Anybody else want to chime in there?
All together.
Just to stop saying the word nigga altogether.
Okay, so I'm gonna run that back to you how I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the trauma and the tragedies that we face as people, we've been able to overcome those and we've been able to succeed in spite of those, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I agree with you. When we were segregated, we did that. Once we integrated, that's not the case anymore.
So now, as a position, so with that, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding, you know, the way I interpreted that is that you're implying that we're no longer doing that, or we're not doing it at the level that we should.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. So I can agree with the at the level that we should part, because we can always do better as a overall arching thing. But to say that we're no longer doing that is a stretch, because we now as a community overall, one of the things that, you know, one of the main things that's on us, and I can say this because I'm somewhat in the finance industry, is that there's a big push, and, you know, sometimes too much, for knowledge as far as like, okay, understanding that we was kings, you know, sometimes folks take it too far and they turn into hoteps, or, you know, establishing financial and generational wealth and how to pass it on and keep things moving. So we're still doing that on a community level. So So could we continue to do it better? Yes, but to say we're not doing it anymore, I gotta disagree with that.
Okay. And Holly, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to moderate, but just continue with this question because we're not doing that corporately. You got a few people that are doing that, but as a people, we're struggling. As a people, with the 13 or 15% of the population we are, let's look at the poverty level of which that Black people have statistically. So overall, no. I disagree. Now, back to the term nigga. So with that term, like I said, and this is just me and take steps towards, doing exactly what you just said in terms of the generational wealth and the building of people. That's just one step I took to basically detoxify myself from the culture.
It's tough. If nobody else will chime in, I'll go ahead and play sort of another devil's advocate, for lack of a better way of putting it. But I have admitted, and I think JB, I've told you this, I don't think I'll ever stop saying the word nigga. I do, have enough respect for people that say, man, don't address me as that. And it's not like I do think that I have grown a little bit in terms of how much and how often I use it, right? Because when I was younger, it was nigga this and nigga that. And so, for me, and we've had this debate in a lot of different areas, I think that, it started off the origins of it. We all know the origins of it. We all know what happened with the culture, kind of taking that back as a term of endearment. And I think that that word, depending on the way that it's used, who you're using it against, even though it's been used as a term of endearment, it can be used in an aggressive manner. And so I do see where you're going with it, JB. But I think I agree with G-Don, just that one point that I don't know. It's a far stretch for us to completely get rid of it as a culture. Now, do I see some of the benefits of it? Yeah, I see kind of the utopia of it, but just me being honest with myself, I don't know if I'll ever get rid of it. But just to go back to the question, you listed that as something that you want to see a change in the youth with, right? So I think that I do try to be mindful of how much I say it in the presence of children and people of a certain age. I think that it's one of those things where it's become a cuss word. And when I get around some of my closest people that I'm comfortable around, adults, I'm meaning, it might slip out a time or two. That's my thoughts on it. If anybody else want to chime in, go right ahead.
Hey, Brother Rodney, I was going to ask you to repeat that question because it's gone long and thoughts have gone through. So repeat that question for me.
Yes, sir. The question, we were talking about confronting our failures. So I wanted us to list or discuss some failures as Black men, either common or personal, that we would want to see a change in with our youth.
Okay, let me drop this and then we can give input. It's something different. I wish I would not have become sexually active so early. Part of the reasons behind that, we didn't know the damage that came along with that. And so some of those issues that were involved with that, it carries over. So for myself, that's one of those things that I wish that I could have changed. And so I teach now going forward with those that I have an ear for, what's the rush? And really, it's not just that, but it's in relationships, period. When you have adults who do not know how to deal with relationships and sex that goes along with that, how can a 15-year-old, how can a 14-year-old deal with that? So that's one of those things that I wish that I could have just waited on.
Hopefully that's a heavy one.
That's not too real, but it is.
I'd agree with that. I'm not gonna tell the full story, but I kind of shared a little bit about it last go around where, I talked about how me and my pops had the agreement that, I was like, hey, you got till 18. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna bring no, you ain't gotta worry about me bringing no babies home or nothing. To add on to Brother Free, I would say that we also need to more emphasize to our young men about that it's not just because there's a lot of talk and a lot of protection around girls and their virginity. Some reasons are misogynistic, some reasons are rooted in logic, and some reasons are rooted in just the reality of the world, and all that's cool. But as a man, as a young man, or as a boy becoming a man, you can also be damaged by over sexualization, and even because sex can be such a big part of a relationship, it can affect how you pair bond and how you connect with women and how you deal with women, how you look at them, how you perceive them. And in all honesty, my first experience left me traumatized. And because I was 18 and just trying to lose it as quick as I could. And for years, I didn't know that it messed with me until one day I was just in therapy and I was told my therapist about it. She was like, hold up. Tell me that story again. And don't tell it like a joke, because I always told the story like it was a joke. It was my party joke or whatever, in order to have conversations. And literally she was like, you don't see how messed up that was? And I was like, I guess I do now. And then, in knowledge and understanding and hindsight, I was able to more process it. But yeah, again, to add on to Brother Free, we should definitely be talking to our young men and boys becoming men a whole lot more and let them know that, yeah, they telling little Susan and Keisha, whoever down the street to, keep their legs closed. You need to keep your thing in your pants too, not just because you don't want to have a baby, but just because emotionally it can affect you in a negative aspect as well.
Gina, I'm glad you got to that emotional part. I think that's the aspect that we always forget as often as men. We don't talk about emotional maturity when we talk about sex. We often press the idea of manhood being tied to our sexuality, but we don't talk about the emotional maturity that it takes to actually have a mature sexual relationship. So I agree that early sexual contact can be very detrimental to the Black man, especially with the history of chattel slavery and bucking us out and all those things that we've had to deal with historically.
The culture has been there, it's we are a hypersexual race, right? And I think that is an extension of what you talked about, what you just mentioned, Dr. Roper, with the history of the way that they did us in the slavery times. I think that is kind of where a lot of that stems from, in terms of just how much sex takes over our young lives, just as a black culture, as a community. So I definitely agree with you there. Brother Rogers, looked like you wanted to chime in.
No, I think there's an exchange that happens, and I think we can talk about it from a probably a whole separate episode about like sexuality in our community as a whole as men. The regret that I hold, I wish that we would teach young men, and I wish I would have got earlier, was about, never mind sex, like that's part of it, but also what is a healthy relationship? Like, what is an actual healthy emotional relationship? We skip over like 99 of the forms of intimacy and skip right to physical intimacy, and the physical intimacy of sex, like erotic intimacy. I think a lot of times we end up, when I talk about this exchange rate, we end up losing that. I mean, this is why, like, whenever I hear somebody who has a little kiddo walking around, oh, his little boy gonna be a heartbreaker, or he gonna do this, like, bro, he 5. Leave that little guy alone. Let that little kid be a kid. We rob children of their childhoods in that sense when we start pressing upon them like romantic relationships and don't allow them to form, which is the bread and butter of our community, friendships, like actual friendships and connections on the way. And I think as we become teenagers, we end up making this exchange rate between like, well, we don't really need to worry about like forming friendships and having healthy dynamics and things like that, knowing what it's like to have harmony in your friendship, disharmony, rupture, repair, like things I know I wasn't taught. I was not taught how to deal with rupture in a relationship at a young age, because all I knew with my family situation was violence, so like learning like, oh, this is how I had to learn how to, like I mentioned, like often a separate thing, we can talk about it later, like in terms of models for like manhood that I got. I had to learn how to apologize, how to do actual like repair. My basketball coach at like age 9, like completely separate event where he was apologizing for something, a bad play call he had made, and it really impacted me as a 9-year-old, because that was the first time I heard an adult apologize. So we're talking about like this I think the reason why we have this overemphasis on sexuality in our male community is it's partly patriarchy, it's partly like white supremacy's effect on us during slavery and segregation and things and so on and so forth, our perceptions of what we think we need to be and how we think we form intimacy, and the thing that makes for emotional safety in a relationship. And none of that shit was taught. Like none of that, nobody pulled me, I don't know about y'all, but nobody pulled me aside and said, hey, this is how you like can be safe for yourself and be safe for the people you're talking to. Nobody pulled me aside and said that. The message that I got from my teenagers, this is how you talk to a lady. This is what you're supposed to say to her. Like but there is no sense of like saying, hey, this is what's important. This is how you show a round of like self-respect. This is how you show that sense of like connection with other people. And this is how you show a sense of like, this is not all just about sex and sexuality in a situation. Because then we end up being bereft of like all, as men, this is how we end up being bereft of like all these genuine, honest connections we need, honestly, with other folks too as well. Which is why we can't say to each other as men, bro, I'm fucked up right now and I really need help. Which is why sometimes every guy I get in session, they tell me the first lie out their face. How you doing, bro? I'm good. Bro, you in therapy. You are not good today. Like, and it's okay if you're not good today. Like, because we're not always, like my supervisor always said, the biggest lie that people say is I'm fine. That's the biggest lie we all tell. I'm fine. I'm cool. But that's a lack of vulnerability and emotional intimacy that we do not get at a very, very young age for a number of different reasons. And I think sex ends up replacing the emotional intimacy that we beautifully crave.
Not to mention, Brother Rogers, the boundaries that it breaks.
Absolutely.
The social, it confuses our social boundaries. Where should we put a boundary for ourselves? Because boundaries are for yourselves. So it also it hurts us being able to set the proper boundaries for ourselves as we develop into young adults.
Exactly. Exactly.
Boy, y'all laying it on real thick tonight. That was just the first question, and here we are. But I had wrote down a couple of things. One of the things that I wrote down was misogyny. I believe that a lot of these things are taught, man. Like we were all children at one point. We came into the culture. We learned things from those that were older than us. And what you guys have mentioned, what Brother Freeman mentioned with the sex conversation, man, that's kind of where I was thinking about when I wrote down misogyny, because everything has been based on sex, bro. Everything has been fucking based on sex since I was a fucking adolescent, in terms of the man that were around me. Your manhood is defined upon sex, how much sex you're able to get. You do this because you want the attention of the women. You got everything was based around sex in terms of the mentorship for me, right? So I don't know if that was the case for everybody, but just that was most of what I got at a very young age. It wasn't until I got to college, man, that I met some brothers that where it actually looked like that I could learn something from them of substance. But because before that, it was really just about your athleticism and your ability to get some before I got to college. So that kind of brings me back into the next question, man, because, like I said, kids follow behind what they see. So what were some of your models for manhood growing up, whether positive or negative? What were some of y'all's models for manhood?
So if I can, Rodney. So for me, I grew up with a very strong Black male role model in the house, right? Very fortunate to have that. So my father was my main role model, and I wanted do pretty much everything that he did. So because he was growing as I was growing, I got to see mistakes. I got to see how you bounce back from mistakes. I got to see he exemplified what it was. Now that I'm older, I understand what it means to be a man in a married relationship, married, loving, productive relationship. So that was my main model. But interesting enough, even growing up in the suburbs, I was able to also see very negative influences that I modeled some behavior after too, because I was only in the house for a certain amount of time, but I also had to be out in public for a certain amount of time. And so I had those negative influences as well as positive. But the negative influences were because of mainly wanting some type of social standing, right? Especially in the Black community, or being a Black man, growing up teenager in the 80s, you had to be tough. You had to be able to stand on it. You had to be you had to be physically like a physical man. And so I took on some of those aspects as well. I think that's most men. Most men get a little bit of positive and negative as they grow up. So I think we're influenced by both sides of that.
I agree with that. I think mine was that I talk about my I really resonated when J. Cole said rest in peace, Uncle Phil. He's the only father I ever knew. Like I think that idea of like, for me, it was about creating a kind of a mosaic of a father, of a dad. My father was in the home. My father worked. My father worked and provided for us and everything else. But I would argue he was not emotionally available and quite abusive in a lot of ways. Now, with that being said, I mean, even though I couldn't name any of those at the time growing up, I found myself gravitating to other men in my life, like my basketball coaches, various ones over the years, or older uncles and things like that. And I ended up having a kind of this mentality of kind of take what you need and leave the rest of that shit. Like take from here. Yes. Okay. I want to be a man like that, but not like that. Man like this, but maybe not like this. And some things stuck out to me, like that basketball coach who apologized. Shout out to Coach Wallace. Other coaches I had during that time frame who taught like all these things and said, hey, this is how you take responsibility and accountability. This is how you go about speaking to someone. This is how you go about presenting yourself. This is how I can instill you some confidence. I mean, one of my uncles, taught me how to cook, taught me the basics on how to cook. And, so it took all this stuff and kind of put it in this pot, and it became like this stew of like manhood, where I could take some stuff and then leave some other stuff. But the problem is that, I would argue that, as a young man, we need our dads. Like, we need that. And to have one right in front of me who couldn't reach me says a whole lot. So I think when it comes down to like boys becoming men and like us, getting this kind of composite sketch of like who we model fatherhood off of, and who we model our manhood off of, I think it's a sketch. It's a sketch in terms of what's available,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Especially the part about the composite. Just me myself, again, father was in the home, father provided. Father didn't always do the right things, but there were certain things that he always did right, no matter what. Again, my father dealt with some substance issues, but he also kept a job nonstop. Never been fired from a job, always worked. Man, I always had what we wanted, always had what we needed, yada, yada, you know how that story goes. And then I was also the youngest. My brother is about 4 years older than me. And on top of that, I come from a large family. I got 20 aunts and uncles on both sides. So, some good examples, some bad examples, some examples to take a little bit from. And then again, on top of that, I was, raised in the church. So there was a large community, and, I was looking at the church that I grew up in had a large male population. It wasn't just a bunch of women sitting around. It was definitely more women than men, but I'd say, a good majority of the women had husbands who also came to church, who were deacons, who were fixing stuff around the church, who were, cutting grass, grabbing the boys up, saying, "Hey, we finna go put up tables, do things like that." They see you walking a certain way. Hey, don't walk like that. Hold your head up when you're walking. Use put some strength into it when you shake a man's hand. Don't put a wet towel in another man's hand when you're talking to him. How to dress. All things like that. And so again, you would have to, at least for me growing up, I had to, learn from my brother, watching him, learn from my father, watching everybody. But on some level, there needs to be a level of, okay, how do I navigate all these pieces of men that I want to take from? Which are good pieces, which are bad pieces, which seem like good pieces but are actually bad, and vice versa, which seem like bad pieces but actually good. And I think we as men have to let go of our ego and be able to identify and say, hey, you see how brother such and such just cussed that man out? It wasn't right that he cussed him out, but it was right that he stood up for himself. Just those little type of distinctions. Like, you see how such and such wife run all over him? Don't you ever let no woman run you over like that. But he listened to her. So make sure you listen to your wife, but you ain't gotta get run over. Add some balance to it and to navigate. Because again, no such thing as bad traits, but as far as how it's applied. And then also the method may have been wrong that you might have witnessed, that you might have thought, okay, such and such dress nice. Well, his definition of dressing nice is to wear a hot pink suit every day. Nigga, you don't need to be wearing hot pink every day. But he cares about his appearance. You should be caring about your appearance. So, I think that's where,
It's interesting because I think a couple of you, well, all of you brothers that actually just chimed in, I think you all grew up with both parents in the home. Your mother and your father were in the home.
Yes, sir.
And then, like you guys said, there's some positive, negative. There's some positive and some negative things that you can pick up. But then, like you also, what it sounds like you guys pointed out was it's collectively, man. It's all of the man that you have access to at a young age. Would anybody agree or disagree with that? I know that's the point that the brothers just made. It's collectively.
Yeah, I agree. But can I add something to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so and I got to go to my foundation, and that's with the word, because that's the only true guidance that we have. Let me speak for myself. So the word says that we're wonderfully and fearfully made, and so that's by our Creator. Okay, now how do you create something if you don't know what's created? Sometimes we have to create our own vision of what we see, what God has allowed us to see, and then become that. So we have been so spoiled with having models, and models are awesome. But what happens when the desire that is placed off in your DNA, there is no model for? You have to just become. And I'm using this in this term. So quick story to kind of bring this around. So I knew early on, roughly about the age of 13 or 14, I knew what my calling was in life, and that was to be a man of God. Had no earthly idea what a man of God was. But now here at 45.
Did we lose Brother Marcus?
I'm still here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So, and I don't know where you lost me at.
You said, I think what the last part I heard was at the age of
45. So at the age of 45, and really it's been probably about the last 20 years, I have been becoming what was inputting me early on. And that comes from self-discovery. That comes from being vulnerable and really just taking what you see, as Brother Rogers mentioned, from those that are around you, because there's something in us. You don't have to be a godly person to know right and wrong, to see and acknowledge right and wrong. But you can see what is can be favorable for you. And I hope that makes sense. But there's still guidance. I had the pleasure of being the youngest out of 7 kids, no father in the house. I stayed around my mom. So there were some tendencies that I picked up just from being around my mom that some of my older siblings didn't like. And so they were able to guide me. This is what we do. Hit me upside my peanut head and don't do that. Watch how you're standing, as brother mentioned there. And so we need that around. But at the end of the day, what was your calling for you to be? What was your destiny? And if we're not working towards that, got to question it. So it's kind of like that old camera, Polaroid camera. There was a negative. Was it Jay-Z? I don't know if it was Jay-Z or not, but negative make better pictures. Working with negatives make better pictures. And so that's come on, brother. I got a little bit off in it.
Yeah, it's Drake.
Drake, okay.
Hold on.
Yeah.
That's Drake. Okay.
Drake. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Go ahead.
Negatives make better pictures. But my whole thing with that, this is one of the reasons that I am so positive in what I do. I can look at the negative, but what's coming from that? Nothing. And so, yes, you may not have had a father in the house, but at what point in time are you going to take accountability for who you are? Because that's what it's going to come down to. What is it that you wanted for yourself? We can't put it on anybody else. I can't put it on another race. I believe it was, I'm sorry, y'all. The DOC said it's nobody can do it better. This is way back in the day, back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. The DOC, I think, is in the West.
Yeah, we all own. We all own.
Yeah. Yeah. But
no doubt.
Yeah, but taking what you have and doing something with it. Nobody can do it better than those that are on this call right here. Even in our hardships. This is why you have so many to take from what we do. And you got to stay up on that. You got to remind yourself of that. Nobody can do anything better than what you're doing right now. That's what makes us so valuable. And not accepting what others may put on the television, on the radios or whatever, but just knowing off inside of you. See, there's times you got to cut off all of the other noise and go what's off in your heart. And I'll digress, man. You ready for that off here? No.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man.
Hey, brother Rob, I know we gotta get to a commercial break, but yes, I wanted to say just one word is what I heard from everybody, and without saying it, and it was discipline. What's modeled to us is discipline, and what Brother Freeman alluded to is making the choice to go the right path. But it all takes discipline. What my father demonstrated to me was discipline. What people in the streets demonstrated to me as being a man was being disciplined and sticking to whatever you was doing, whether it was right or wrong. You'll sort that with maturity, right? But what really is the model that we look for is, how do you become disciplined to reach whatever goal that you're trying to obtain? So whether it's having somebody model having an apologetic spirit when they do something wrong, right? That takes a certain amount of discipline, because it's often easier not to apologize. It's often easier to say, you know what, fuck you, what can you do about it? You know what I'm saying? And Rodney, you know me. So when I say stuff like that, I'm being very literal when I say it. Like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah. Now, but because I also seen that model of manhood, right? But what changes me and being able to use that now is my discipline, right? And even in my relationship with God, when certain things happen to come my way, I'm disciplined enough now in my faith to pray before I move. Right? Because I know if I move, then I'm probably stuck in my boyhood. I'm probably not gonna move like a man should move. I'm probably gonna move like a child would move, because it's probably gonna be something impulsive, not well thought out, not well planned. If I move in my emotion. So I think that's the biggest takeaway that was modeled for me was discipline.
Mm-hmm. Man, y'all dropping so many bombs on me, man. I'm trying to keep up with time and with the conversation. It's like, oh my geez. We do need to get to a commercial break though. So everybody hold their thoughts, man. We're gonna dive back into it as soon as we get a word from our sponsors.
At Lifted KC, we aim to reduce the stigma associated with mental health by promoting awareness of mental illness, its symptoms, and providing resources for those in need. We believe that through trust, relationships, understanding, service, and teamwork, transformation is possible. Support the Men Heal movement by donating to the Cash App handle LiftedKC.org. For more information about our organization, visit www.liftedkc.org. Lifted KC, transforming lives through hope and healing.
What up, podcast world? This your dude, Walt Lee Dundilla, the Popper, Mr. Activelli. Pull up on me, 1809 Vine, 8600 Ward Parkway, or yes, I'm KC.com.
KC is my home. More scratched than the rest, where your bag at? Posted in the store, moving t-shirts and dad hats. Buy 3, get 1 free, you can have that. Niggas get planted, quintiles being lab rats.
Angela Marie Publishing presents, in association with the Blacked Out Couch podcast, The Healing Collection, featuring apparel with 10 unique designs to represent your healing journey in style. Also, check out The Survivor, our custom tote bag tailored for carrying those day-to-day loads. A portion of all proceeds are donated to mental health organizations dedicated to the culture and the community. Visit our store by clicking the link in the description or going to www.angelamariepublishing.com to shop now and support the movement. Let's heal.
What's good? This is Jazz from 64111 Studio. Make sure you holler at me for all your mixing, mastering, and recording needs. For booking, please visit www.64111studio.com.
All right, we back. Man. Real deep, real crazy conversation tonight, fellas. And man, I'm looking at these questions and I don't even know where to go anymore with everything, man, with everything that we've already touched on. But man, tonight, man, we talking about how do our boys become men. We've talked about, how do we give or show better examples of ourselves? What are some of the things that we want to change? Me, myself, I'm not a parent. So I don't have any children. I believe Brother G-Don is also not a parent. The rest of you brothers are parents. And so like the theme of tonight's show is really about, what do we do to teach our boys to become better men? And for me, I think that always starts with the parenting. Like Brother Rogers mentioned, we not having the right influences from your biological father can take a toll on you as a child. I know it took a toll on me, even though my father was there for early on in my relationship or early on in my childhood, And then there was a split in that relationship that had to be rekindled later in life after my mom passed. But I just wanted to ask you brothers as fathers, man, how are you able to be a good father through your failures, through some of the mistakes that you are aware of that you made? How do you convey that to your children, whether it's sons or daughters?
I'll start it off like this. I mean, I got 2 little girls. And the biggest thing that I want to teach them, even as when they were like littles, like daddy makes mistakes, and not in the sense that you have to excuse your daddy's mistakes, but like I made it a habit to apologize to my daughters on a regular basis if I fucked up. And sometimes it may be like basic shit, like if there's a scenario where they're squabbling back and forth and I misread the situation and who's at fault or whatever, and I jump right in. I'm like, and my youngest tell me, Daddy, you used your big voice when you said that. I was like, oh, was that scary? She's like, yeah, that was scary. I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I should be able to speak to you in a calm voice too as well. I didn't need to, like, you weren't in any physical danger. So I need to raise my voice and say your name that loud, you know? And basic shit like that says like, hey, I'm going to teach you how my job as a father is to be a model for how that I'm one of the two primary relationships, their mother and myself. So it is my job to show them how they should be treated. I'm the, you know, one of the plumb lines in that situation. So I think we talk about this kind of deal. Like if I am treating them like shit, or if I'm treating them with disrespect, or if I treat their mother with disrespect, they see that. They'll see that, and they'll even if I never say it, they'll clock that. Like, man, that's they either clock it as normal, or they'll clock it as like, oh, that's abnormal. I want to go away from that, and I don't want that to be the lesson. I don't want any lessons I give my daughters to be what the fuck not to do. I'd rather be like, oh, that's how a man should be treated. A man should treat a woman. A man should treat it like a young girl or whatever. Like it should be clocked in a sense. Oh, he doesn't raise his voice. Oh, he treats me with respect. He calls me by my name. We talked about consent. We talked about like physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, the whole nine. So I'm just trying to, when I talk about the idea of giving my kiddos what I never got, I'm not just talking about financial. I want to give them what I never got in terms of like emotional safety, relational safety, and being able to recognize, hey, I see y'all. I see who y'all are as individuals, not just as my daughters, but you have your own individual personalities, wants, needs, and I want to be able to communicate with y'all. I don't have to, you know, have a show of power as a father to let them know that I can have power to protect them. I don't have to have power over them. I can empower them to be, you know, better women as they get older.
Right on. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
So, Rodney, you know my story. So I went away when my daughter was 2.5. And so then I served 15 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections. And when I was released, she was a senior in high school. But so there was no hiding my mistakes. But what I did do is tell her and talk to her about is how slips count, you know, and that there are times when you will make a mistake and you'll have to pay for that mistake in major ways. But as she's grown, she's 26 now. I think the biggest lesson I taught her was that there's really no such thing as a failure. Although I've made mistakes, because I did not concede to those mistakes, then those just become lessons. And you're going to learn some hard lessons in life. And sometimes you're going to get it right, and sometimes you're going to get it wrong. And I just let her know that I get it wrong sometimes. And sometimes I plan it wrong, you know, because I want her, you know, I want her to be very real, because I don't want her to ever be in a situation. She's grown and about to have my grandbabies now, you know, my twin grandbabies. So I don't ever want her to think that she can't come and talk to me because I'm not going to be real. That's one thing she's always, I told her from her mom got mad at me because she asked me, hey, Santa Claus, it's not real, that's your mom. She's probably about 4. But because I was but the position I was in, I wasn't in a position to be dishonest to her on top of everything else. So I couldn't be an absent father physically and then perpetuate lying to you so that you learn lying as a behavior.
Okay. So
we had very real discussions, even in the worst environment. And she was very honest with me. And I think at 15, she said, Dad, I don't want to come visit you no more in that place. That's cool. I'll see you when I get home.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to develop that type of relationship with honesty and just being vulnerable. Nothing wrong with being vulnerable.
Right.
You know, something jumped out at me. Can y'all hear me? Something jumped out at me that you said about, you know, there's no such thing as failures, right? Brother Marcus, it was either Brother Marcus or Ryan. One of the brothers on another episode said something about the fact that, you know, there are some good failures because of the lessons that you learn from them. So I love how, you know, just that energy and that train of thought, man, because those I've never really thought of things like that. You know, I look at it as something that, you know, I set out to accomplish or a mistake that I made, and I just call that a failure, even though I learned the lesson. But when you can get something out of it, then it becomes empowering. Then you can take that and learn discipline, like we spoke about earlier, to not make some of those same mistakes. So, JB, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I can.
You got sons and daughters, right?
I do. So something I learned with my first daughter, and surprisingly enough, learned this from my wife. And what I'm about to say is so simple, but it's difficult, and it's leading by example. So actually living what you're trying to teach. Hence, let me stop using this N-word. You know, so it started for me a long time ago, and it was a progression for me. But just, you know, not lying to your kids, you know, Santa Claus. That's what none of my kids can tell you I ever brought up Santa Claus ever.
Oh my God.
Ever.
You too. Okay.
Hey, Easter Bunny, like I flat out told him, I was like, hey, that's some BS, bro. I was like, what is Easter about? And you know, we in church, they talking about it. I was like, the hell does a bunny have to do with that? A damn rabbit. They're like, So being transparent with your kids and leading by example, those are two things that were just like, I don't know why it's hard, but once I embraced it, it was nothing anymore anyway.
I hear you there, JB, because like I remember the thought process. I've heard from both sides of my family in terms of like, do as I say, not as I do. And the more I learned about psychology, man, the more I learned that was some bullshit. Like you can't tell somebody do as I say, not as I do, and say, well, because if most of our learnings come through our implicit, like the examples we get and the example set and everything else, you can't say to someone, hey, we don't do X, Y, and Z in this house, but then you doing X, Y, and Z in this house. Like they're gonna take that last example and say, well, I mean, that's how they deal with anger. That's how they deal with frustration. That's how they deal with this. So we can't purport like honesty and then be dishonest with our kids. We can't. So I'm with you there. My daughter figured out from at a very young age about Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, all that. She was she asked all the hard questions immediately. She was like, hold on. So wait a minute. Like, so how you get this? She's like, Daddy, you lock up the house every night. How they get in?
It's magic, baby.
Wait a minute, man. Y'all are throwing me for a loop, man. So wait a minute. All y'all got kids, and y'all took away that fantasy from there. All of y'all took that fantasy away from your children.
I didn't take that fantasy away from my oldest. She sussed it out herself. My youngest still is on that type of time. Like, and she will get angry at you if you say anything other than that because she's 5. But like my oldest, I think she was about 4 or 5 years old maybe when she put it together. She's a very intuitive. She's a very.
You just didn't lie to her, is what you're saying. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing from you guys as parents. You don't want to perpetuate lies to your children. That's one of the lessons that you've learned.
Hey, so think about this, because I look at it from both ends. So if they believe in Santa Claus, they can believe in the boogeyman too, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not gonna let my kids sit here and believe something imaginary can hurt them. Like it don't exist, bro. Like no. Like it doesn't, and I don't call and I say this because of my daughters. I went through it more with them. I didn't call my daughters bro, but but once again, they are their own people, even being younger. So perfect example. My two daughters, they're about a year and a half apart, maybe a little less actually. We were talking about something on that Santa Claus kick, Easter Bunny kick, something like that. My youngest daughter, she was like, "Yeah, I don't believe in them, but the Tooth Fairy is real." Excuse me? Now, let me tell you what my baby thought the Tooth Fairy was real. Because she would lose a tooth. Guess what we were doing? We were putting money under that pillow. And with me being an irresponsible parent, I forgot one time, so I had to write her a note and put it under here like the next night. So I'm like, "Oh, you must have put it in the wrong spot, baby. You gotta." So I put a note under there talking about, "Sorry, I missed you the night before." So guess what I did, bro? Like, guess I perpetuated that. So that's why she's still believing the damn Tooth Fairy.
And even okay. So wait, y'all teach me something every episode. Something as innocent as that for the greater cause of not perpetuating lies. That being something that you develop with the relationship with your children, the honesty, being upfront, raw. Something as innocent as Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy.
I distinctly remember the not even, I wouldn't even say the anger, the incredulous rage that my daughter came to us with and said, "Y'all lied to us?" Like, she was pissed. So I was like, "Oh, absolutely not. From this point on, you get the straight story." Like, nah, baby, no, it's. And the thing is, though, she also had to grieve a bit as she got a little bit older, and she noticed that her friends at school still believe in Santa. You know, she's going to 4th grade and stuff now. She's like, friends still believe in Santa, things like that. And she's like, "Well, how do I keep the magic? Y'all told me not to lie, so like, what do I tell them?" I was like, I say, "Kiddo, everybody believes something different, and that's okay. That's okay. They can have." We talk. I end up saying teaching about intellectual boundaries. Just because you believe this way, don't believe everybody else got to believe this way, and that's okay. But, and that doesn't mean it's not magical. That doesn't mean your mom and dad aren't like scouring your Amazon list or whatever else you got to figure out what you want this year. Like I do think it was something about, like, I talk about my father, my mother, like different points in this podcast, not necessarily today, but like my father for sure. The one thing I would say they did on point was Christmas was always some extravagant shit because they both worked. Like for us in the hood, like it was always like, you know, like they made it magical. And like I look back on some of those Christmases, I'm like, man, I really appreciate that. Not because of the gifts, because like the amount of, as a father now, the amount of effort that goes into like putting that stuff together and making it magical. I would see my wife like put like glitter and stuff by the cookies and stuff the night before and like wrap the gifts. I'm like, it takes a lot of effort to put that together. And I was like, hey, at this point now, I'm like, and even when she asked about the cookies, she was like, "That was y'all?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "So hold up. Who drank the milk and ate the cookies?" And I was like, like, "You ate the cookies?" Like, so, but it's just that idea, like it's the idea of like I want to be able to model that. I don't, as having, for me, like, and for having two parents who routinely would misrepresent, distort, lie, or whatever else, or be deceptive about what was going on with them, it means the world to me when somebody's absolutely real. Tell me the damn truth.
All the way down to Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy. Like, because the thing is, it actually made me, for me looking back on it now, because I found out about 7 years old when I was a kid, because my mom liked to record us opening our presents at Christmas to have like memories. So I really, really thank for that. Shout out to moms for that one. But with that, I often look at the tape from the night before, because she said it one year when I was like 7, she said it to record. And I was like, Mama, how does Santa Claus get down the chimney? We ain't got no damn chimney. I didn't say damn, but we ain't got no chimney in here. He ain't come to the front door. Like, and he come to the back door. That's a latch back there. You can't get through here. Like,
you know, this is blowing me away, because it's something I guess I never processed or thought about. I mean, if as a child you catch your parents in that lie and they keep it up, you that can start to have some sort of implications on your mental health. You know, if you know that if mom and daddy keep lying to me about this Santa Claus character, and I know they lying, what else would they lie to me about, right? It's interesting because when I was younger, and not too much younger, but I mean like younger than I am now. I'm old as dirt, but in my early adulthood, I used to hear black men specifically say that as it pertains to Santa Claus, I'm not giving no white man, some fat white man, credit for how hard I've worked to see my children smiling on Christmas. Right. So I get it on that from that aspect, but I never thought about it from the honesty aspect, like having that sort of trust, between you, the parent, and the children. That actually brings me into my next question. If anybody else want to chime in, but I do got another question.
Just real quick, is just that with the whole, the whole Santa Claus thing or whatever, one of the other unknown or maybe unforeseen or, one of the implications of that is, because like the whole thing about Santa Claus is like, oh, if you good, then you get what you ask for. But sometimes, no matter how good you is, mom and daddy can't afford it. Now what? So now the child is going back. If you're holding up that facade, now the child is going back saying maybe I wasn't good enough. Right. Or maybe no matter how good I am, good things won't happen to me. When it's not the case. When instead you can just have a conversation of, yes, when you're good things happen to you, and then also earning rewards, which is a better lesson to teach than versus just being good and good things will happen, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. No, I feel you on that for sure. It's just something that I never thought about it from that aspect, like the whole honesty. But that does bring me into my next question. And we just talking about fatherhood, man, and helping our children become better versions of themselves, and specifically helping how do our boys become men. But one of the things that I wanted to ask y'all, man, is do y'all feel, what are y'all opinions on this? Do you feel like we've lost the opportunity as a community to regain the trust from the youth? Because that was, that took me right into that question perfectly. Where do y'all feel we stand on that? Because there is a gap. There's a gap there in terms of trust between some of the older and the younger generation, and that's right in line with what we're talking about. So, how do y'all feel? Do you think that we've lost the opportunity to regain that trust from the youth?
Absolutely
overall?
Not. Yeah, absolutely not. One, they're making new young knuckleheads every day. So, if you missed him at 10, he got a 9-year-old brother. Try to reach him. And there's always gonna be a divide. And I think on some level it's healthy that there should be a divide between generations and stuff, just because of the way that they see the world and the opportunities that are available, not available, etc. So yeah, no, definitely it's never too late to reach the youth. Nah, not at all.
Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I don't think societies and we as a people have gone so far to the left that we can't reach our youth. I think we have to really start defining what manhood is for ourselves as Black men. We have to set the standard of what manhood is versus toxic masculinity. We have to start defining those terms and then teaching those terms and modeling those terms to the community. I think that's the biggest thing is we haven't defined what manhood is to a Black man. What does it mean to be a Black man in America? And then until you define that, what manhood is, then it's going to be very difficult to reach the youth because you're not consistent and the message isn't consistent. So I think that's the only thing that's holding us back is that we haven't developed on a mainstream the ideahood of or the philosophy and practice of manhood. Our definition.
I think about something.
Our definition.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think about something that Holly said about when he talks about like you can't start over. There's only one book. You can't turn that over in that situation. And I agree with that in that sense because when we talk about like masculinity, manhood, and like G-Don said, the opportunity to reach somebody else in the situation. When we talk about like how we show up and what we teach, I think there is a big like thought process on like, oh, well, these young men are just out here doing this and this. The world that we grew up in no longer exists. I know this every time I talk to my daughter and I tell her there was a time before the internet. We had to go down to the library and look some shit up. And she's like, there was no internet? The world we grew up in is no longer there. So the tools and techniques that we actually think are a fit for this generation may not be a fit anymore. Like the day we talk about in terms of gun violence. Like, oh, well, we need to put down the guns and talk to each other. I mean, yeah, that'd be nice. We can just throw hands and call it a day. But like, there's way past that point a lot of times. Or it can be a scenario we need to figure out how to solve our conflicts. Well, that'd be great if someone teaches the youth how to solve conflicts. They're watching us learn how we solve our conflicts. And if we're not honest, like we talked about before, if we're not honest about our mistakes and saying, hey, that's not the way you really need to go. That's not the way you need to solve that particular problem. This is where it landed me. And being real about, like, for lack of a better word, some of the bullshit we was taught as younger. Like some of the absolute reckless bullshit we was taught. Like while I was flagrant bullshit, like not even like remotely close. Like I wish somebody would pull us to the side and say, hey, like I learned differently. I'm older now. That was bullshit that I was teaching you. Or if to be more eloquent about it, it was an ill-informed opinion at the time. But I call it was bullshit. And like, and I hope, and one thing that I've taught my little girls is that you have the right to call BS on what I'm saying. Because if it does not sound fully right to you, the same way I do it in treatment, if I try to explain an intervention to you and you're like, that don't make sense, can you make it make sense to me? It is my responsibility if I'm bringing you something to explain that to you. But I think a lot of the shit we were given was just, oh, well, I'm the OG, so I'm gonna just tell you what to do and it's gotta be right. But I look back on it now, I'm like, man, 90% of what my father said was probably bullshit. And then like some of like the shit that my OG was trying to tell me was also bullshit. But it came from a scenario where it was like, this is my life experience. I'm giving you the best I have. And but no one taught them either. So I think at this juncture, like of us as men, is like taking like an honest reflection and accountability of what was given to us, and then what we pass on to the next generation, and have them take it with a grain of salt too, and say, hey, this is only informed by what we know right now in the year of our Lord 2020. This information can change based on when you become a man. But here's what I have for you right now. Being honest about what we're handing them so that they can make an honest, critical decision. Because a lot of times, because our world moves very, very fast because of all trauma and everything else, we need to teach them like critically, like how like, hey, this is the mistakes I made and this is how you can like not run into that shit. And maybe this might help you. I hope it does, but it may not. But if we start presented with this, I got the answers, I know more than what you know because I've been here before. Like it might work, but it might not work. It might be bullshit. So being like given the option to examine what we say too as well, that allows someone to be safe. That allows someone to actually engage, and that's often the disconnect I see when I work with teams when they bump up against the older generation because we want to, and I'm guilty of this too. We want to lecture. We lecture folks, and actually hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to hear their point of view. Like, and it makes sense because they're 13, 13, 14-year-olds. But at the very least, be able to say, okay, how do you see this young man? Now, here's my, let them go first. And then we lead by responding to what they have.
I think I'm going to tell you, man, as I hear you guys talk, I just be reflecting on my childhood. And, you know, my dad ran youth programs where he developed them at church, developed them in the community, worked at City Union Mission over the youth program as a director. And the one thing that he consistently did was, and spoke on it and told why he did it, was he would tell his story. Like he would tell some of the things that he did as a youth. He would tell the consequences. He would tell what he learned from it. And he would talk about emotions. He was, I don't know if he was just ahead of his time or what, but it was very interesting when I would come in contact with people who didn't have that model in front of them. It's very difficult to navigate emotions and the proper reaction as a man. And so I just think that's so important as men, that we make sure that we are not just giving a model, but giving the story behind how we got to where we're at. I think that's the biggest connection point, because a lot of times we want to preach to them, like you were just saying, Brother Rogers. We want to preach to them, but we don't want to tell them why we know that. Like, yeah, I got some knowledge for you, but here's why I know that. Like sleeping around might not be the coolest thing. Here's how I know that. Right. These are some of the things that can happen to you. I remember my dad used to tell us, man, and he did it in church, and I didn't realize what he did. He told us a story of him being in the Marines and somebody catching chlamydia and them having to use a hammer to knock it out of the, like, it was very graphic, right? Right. And right, imagine hearing that as a teenager. You're like, okay, so those are some of the consequences. Okay, yeah, I don't.
As a teenager, as a grown man, I'm not having sex no more, bro.
Man.
A fucking hammer. Oh.
Man, I'm gonna put a condom on if I lay in the bed tonight.
Right, but that was also the conversation, Gina. I was like, hey, if you're gonna be out here, having sex, you need to be making sure that you're protecting yourself and others as well, because there are some real results outside of pregnancy.
Very true.
But I think that's so important, Rodney. Just, you got to tell people the truth.
Man, listen, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. Y'all keep doing me like this tonight, man. Y'all keep throwing them at me, throwing things at me that I am definitely not ready for in the least bit. But I definitely, I'm picking up with what y'all saying, man. But I think I kind of want to play devil's advocate a little bit here, right? Because most of you all's, the consensus was we have not lost the opportunity to regain the trust from our youth. And I don't know that that's true. I think that this shit is all the way fucked up. I don't think, and when I say our youth, I'm in my 40s. I think that most of us are either in our 30s and 40s. Am I right or wrong about that?
Right. Yep,
okay.
Yep.
When I say us and then youth, the youth are those in their 20s and below. We've lost the trust of them motherfuckers. They don't listen to what we say, whether we lecturing or we leading by example. That's where I'm going with it, right? Bert, I agree with you 1,000% that the world that we lived in, the world that we came up in, no longer exist, right? I think that that's just sort of the way that time lapses from generation to generation. You made a great point. We have, going forward, we do have to start to kind of keep ourselves mindful of that there are some things that we had to do or that work for us that may not work for the next generation. So I agree with you there. But I think the way that the younger generation looks at it, don't nothing that we learn lessons about as older motherfuckers work for them. They don't trust us. They don't. It's like they've lost faith in our ability to mentor them, because this shit seems all the way off the whack, fucked up to me. So am I the only one that truly feels like that? Because y'all sounded like y'all was giving some politically correct answers, and I don't want to talk about that right now when we talk about the fucking.
No, Rodney. But
no,
if you would ask our parents how they thought about Generation X,
they would say the same thing.
They called us Generation X.
Not the same thing.
They said the same thing.
The same shit about us.
They could not ever retire, bro. They thought we were so fucked up that we were going to ruin the entire country.
Right.
They did not even want to turn the keys over to us. The latchkey kids, the latchkey generation. Oh, man, the baby boomers.
Low key, they still have it.
Right, that part.
They still don't.
You down ain't lying.
Right. They don't. Bro, that rap music, bro, y'all crazy. We don't what.
Like, what are they doing out here?
The exact same
This is
conversations that we having. Like, we don't understand
nah, man.
rap.
The way I see it,
we don't understand.
Right. So the way I see it, and Rodney, how old are you?
I'm 44.
You 44. So I'll be 34 here next week. So I think because times have changed so drastically, even from me and Burke's perspective, the fact that it's changed, add another 10 years and, shit doubles. So add a 20-year perspective between you and, the 20 people in their 20s and in their teens. So I think that's why you a little bit more disgruntled when you see some of the shenanigans going on. Because me and Burke, we was easing into the shenanigans. You know what I'm saying? We had it wasn't half of them. We had like 2 or 3 friends on the bullshit. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We had like 2 or 3 friends on the bullshit.
Listen to what I'm alleging though. I'm not comparing the shenanigans. I'm comparing the trust, because as fucked up as we were, we did our thing in our generation. There was still a certain amount of trust and us allowing them to mentor and lead us.
Well, who was leading us?
As far as,
You like, I don't know about you, but like, St. Louis KC, that kind of connection, right? So like, when it comes down to like who our OGs was, they was in their 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Now 22, 23 mentor these young kids. Like older cousins could pull me aside because they.
Rodney, can you give an example of what you're talking about?
You said me?
No, Rodney, can you give an example of the disconnect?
The disconnect?
Like of the distrust? Like, why do you think so distrustful of us?
Well, because there's a lot of them running off to do things like technology. Really, I think that's what it is. I think the fucking internet destroyed the world. The internet has made it to where you like for instance, I don't have kids, but I can, man, I bet my last dollar to my name that this is what's going on for y'all that got kids right now. You might tell your child, hey, look, this is the way that something works. And instead of them just listening to you, they can go Google that shit. Like, man, daddy don't know what the fuck he talking about.
But what if you don't?
So,
but that's where honesty come into play. Like we were saying earlier, that's where honesty come into play.
Told them how you would do it, and they found a better way.
Right.
Well, it ain't. What I'm saying is, I'm trying to leave that into the example. These children now, and I'm not even just talking about children. I'm just talking about younger folks, the younger generation. I know. Thank you, G Don, for reminding me that I'm twice their age, and you're only a little bit older than these motherfuckers. So I love that. That's the truth. That is the truth. But what I'm saying is, with the access to information nowadays, a lot of people coming up in that, especially those that are young, that this is all that they've known. They feel that they don't need mentorship and guidance for individual one-on-one. Like, bro, we had mentors, bro. Like, yes, when we were younger, some like real young, some of our only influences may have been all negative and fucked up. But as we grew older and got mature, there were some older men that we could look up to, some older women that we could gain knowledge and learn some things from. That we trusted that where they were leading us was in the right direction. Feels like that nowadays, because of the informational age, this is the example that I'm giving, they don't need that. They don't need somebody telling them what to do. They can find somebody else on the internet that will agree with whatever sort of misconceptions they got in their mind, and they'll go in that direction. It feels like it's a lack of trust. You can't really reach them in the way that some of our older generation could reach us.
I think G-Don hit it on the head though. It's honesty though. Have we been consistent, and have we been consistent enough with that generation for them to trust us?
Right.
It always goes back to what our behavior is, right? Because we have to model something. So if we're modeling bullshit and inconsistency and inadequacies and failures and a failure mindset, then no, they're not going to trust you to come to you to ask you how to change the tire. You're a failure. You didn't change mama's tire. Mama come and ask you to change how to change your time now. Telling me before I can look it up on YouTube. No, I don't need you. But if you're consistent, you're honest, and you're there and you're present, and a man tells you, hey, that's the wrong way to do that, you might start be like, hold up. I know I can trust him because he's an example of a man. But if you ain't been,
they still gonna Google it. They still gonna Google it, but I got you.
Well, hey, you're not gonna stay there.
Yeah, I want to come at this from a different angle.
Go ahead, JB.
Okay.
So, internet came up twice. So something that we had that this younger generation does not have is outside. They don't go outside. They're not in their neighborhood. We were exposed to more people to learn from, be it negative or positive, because we were outside. The internet changed the world. We don't have to go outside. So yeah, the internet is their influence because with this age of information, yeah, I don't have to ask you because this Google knows everything. I learned how to be an electrician from YouTube. It's crazy. So I don't want to say it's distrust because me as a parent, I'm thinking about the bubble my kids are in that I did not have. Like I could leave the house and my parents would not see me until
streetlights came on.
Streetlights. Now,
just about right now.
My kid, he go outside. I'm like, why? Why you want to go outside? Who you? All right, I'm gonna watch you from the window. It's nuts, right? So it's a different time. So they aren't brought up to trust because they have such a safety net around them now.
But that's also because we learned from our upbringing too, because the same way that our parents couldn't divorce themselves from the times they grew up in, the same way we can't either. We have a scenario where the reason we're raising these kids in this sense, as us parents, we raise these kids because I'm in the same boat. My kids play outside, I'm like, all right, I'm either walking with you or looking out the window, where you at? Because as a person who did go out during the summertime in the morning, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock going to play ball with my cousins and uncles till the streetlights came on, sometimes later, it does change a few things because you say some shit you ain't supposed to see. You're like, oh, well, I don't want my kids to see that shit. So I want to be there for them. So in that situation, in terms of the trust or distrust, the same thing I say to my clients, the same thing I say to my kiddos, the same thing I say to folks is don't take my word as gospel. It's really, really important for you to go back and check what I just said. Because if I tell you some bullshit, please check my work. Go back and check my work. It's really, really important. So if they go Google it, they say my daughter's asking something and they go Google it. Oh, it turns out you was right. Okay. Glad to know it. Glad you know that now. And I think a lot of times we have this fear that because again, technology is going to move faster than we do at any given point. But I think what's lost on that generation, on this particular generation is while I do think there's a whole lot of validity in terms of having connections, especially during the pandemic, connections online and such, and connections in the internet and such like that, there is something different there's a difference between playing 2K in the park with your boys with your headset on versus going to the park, having your water in hand and getting your next and then playing ball all day. There is something different that you can't replicate there. And I do think while that is a great way to build community, it is also not, you don't want that to be the only voice that's in your kid's ear. And I do think this generation, I do think we underplay actually how much influence we actually do have by assuming that the divide is so big that they can't hear us. Because there have been times where I've ran groups through ad hoc through the family court now for almost 10 years. And there have been time frames where I talked to a young man and I don't think they used to hear shit of what I got to say the entire time. I mean, I'll see this kid in the street years later. Oh, Mr. Bird, I remember you said blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you remember that shit? You remember that? And I think there's that idea, if we assume that they're not getting anything and we stop speaking, then we've cut off the relationship. I still say, throw your knowledge out there. Let yourself compete with Google.
Oh yeah, no, I ain't gonna stop speaking at all. Yeah, okay. I thought you was about to say look, they gonna steal. You gonna get all this knowledge whether you believe it or not. Everybody know I'm like that, but I get where y'all going though. It is the consistency, the raw honesty that builds that trust, no matter what generation that we're talking about. So I definitely appreciate that. But I always wonder those things, man, because I see a lot of stuff, man. I see, like, so here's something. This is probably something completely, totally unrelated. But in my mind, I think that this is something that maybe we need to look into in terms of helping our boys to become better men. What's going on with these teenage boys that are wearing hoodies in the summertime like they done lost their damn mind? And then before y'all answer that, tell me why parents can't stop it. Like, that's what I mean when I say the distrust of that we've lost with the youth. Something as simple as that. Y'all got y'all kids, y'all teenage boys, in the dead summertime, you can't even get them to stop wearing a damn hoodie, sweating they damn. Come on, man. Where we at with that?
They couldn't get us to stop sagging, bro. What you talking about?
But was sagging detrimental to your physical health? Could you fall out? You could pass out. You can get a heat stroke.
I couldn't
run.
Like,
you can't run.
Okay. Now we're going there. Because that was why I stopped sagging. And this we talking about the influences. Because I used to sag as a young man. But what made me stop sagging was some OG putting it to me that, man, if somebody run up on you and ready to crack you in your jaw, you can't swing until you pull your pants up. And that motivation, something to get me motivated to be able to defend myself with violence, was my motivation to stop sagging. I don't think that sagging compares to the hoodies, though.
Hey, so so with the hoodies,
okay,
my son, exact same thing, and I'll tell him, well, bro, it's 90 degrees outside, go change. But if I'm not around, he gonna leave out with that hoodie. So something I learned is experience is a hell of a teacher. Sometimes you got to let your kids stumble. You got to let them bump their heads. So they be like, damn, daddy was right. Because for me, growing up, it took me damn near dying to be like, I'm going to listen to my mama. She was right. And henceforth, my mama said something, no problem. But I damn near had to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something stupid. I can even tell the story. Stop climbing on the damn house. Like in Chicago, living in apartments, and like the back porch, we would climb the back porches, multiple stories. Stop. Soon as she leave, I'm back up there. I fall about 2 stories, flat on my back. Oh, bro, I'm listening to my mama from now on. So
how old were you when that happened?
I was, I think I was 4th, 5th grade, right around in there.
Okay, so you was real young. You was a bad kid then.
I was. Bro,
climbing up the house.
I was horrible.
Yeah.
And I was good at home. So we don't talk about them stories.
Yeah. Well, but that you brought up an interesting point with you saying experience is sometimes the best teacher, because there are some lessons that your parents, and I remember being like this as a kid as well, where your parents might have thought that you took heed to that lesson because of the way that you were around them, but when they ain't around, I'm still out going to do, experience is sort of the best teacher in that. So I appreciate y'all bringing me back to reality on that. But again, man, it feels like it does feel like that there's a disconnect for me in terms of the trust, but I do see where we can kind of regain that opportunity. So I appreciate that. Did anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, just I was gonna say, what type of trust are you looking for? Are you looking for trust in what you say? Are you looking for trust in your knowledge? Trust that they gonna do what you say? Because honestly, the best type of trust, in my opinion, would be to say, okay, instead of, if I'm going to tell you something and you may or may not believe it, let's look it up, let's research it, let's talk it through and let's figure it out, and let me help you process. So, okay, something simple. You don't know how to change a tire, but you don't believe I know how to change a tire because you ain't never seen me do it. Okay, let's look it up and then let's talk about it and then let's do it together as we both learn how to do it. And so, now that trust is still there, and they might not have necessarily believed your words that you know how to change a tire, but you still established a connection between them.
I like that. I like that idea. The idea of meeting them where they at. You know they're gonna Google the shit or YouTube the shit and look it up. So hey, you know what? Let's look it up together. I like that. I think that has I think that can have some positive effects. Bert, did you have some resources to share with us? I know we've been talking about sort of the concept of we grew up with that whole phrase of do as I say, not as I do. And I'm getting a little bit better at that, at breaking that, right? Breaking sort of that culture of being like that with somebody younger than you. But did you have any resources that you want to speak to on that?
Not to say a full resource, but just some information for that situation. There won't be a website I can direct y'all to this time. But when it comes down to like what makes a bond secure between someone, the things that help us like get through life, feel like we can trust people and things like that, it only takes one person to make for a decently secure attachment. And secure attachment is basically like I have care, trust, I feel like somebody got my back, that kind of thing. This doesn't have to come from the biological parent. It'd be nice if it did. It'd be helpful if it did. But it can come from allo parents. It can come from your basketball coaches. It can come from teachers. It can come from whoever else. And that's why having that village to protect against what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And the opposite flip side that doesn't really get as much traction is protective childhood experiences. So the ability to talk to your family about your feelings, the feeling that your family can stand by you during difficult times, having community traditions, sense of belonging, like school, and feeling supported by your friends, and feeling safe and protected by an adult in my home, or having at least two non-parent adults who take a genuine interest in me. And I'm going to borrow from what one of my colleagues said. He said, I forgot where he was quoting, but he said that like secure attachment is about having delight in the person that you see. So meaning like if you think about like your parents, or if you think about the people that you parent, or your nephews, your cousins, and whoever else, are you happy when they walk into the room? And a lot of times in environments where there's been abuse or neglect, that's not necessarily the case. And that's a huge, huge issue in terms of like adverse childhood experience that we don't necessarily see as that emotional neglect we don't necessarily see as big of a problem, but it really is. It causes a whole lot of depression and anxiety and things along those lines. So when I talk about us connecting and boys turning to men and us connecting with the youth in that situation, we don't know who we're that beacon for. We can be, I'm saying, hey, to this young man, is he going to go hoop and everything? I'm rooting for you, looking out for you, that kind of thing. That can mean a whole lot of difference. Like in my personal experience, do I think that my coach is up at night thinking about the one time he apologized to a group of little boys after a basketball game? No, but it made a hell of an impact on me. So you don't know who you're going to be influencing in that situation. You don't know who you're actually a protective factor for. So I say to you, Holly, keep speaking and everything else. And I also say, like, y'all don't know who y'all actually are influencing. Like when G-Don says, don't stop being a bitch and go to therapy. Like that actually may touch somebody. Like, oh, for real, am I being a bitch? I should probably go to therapy. Shit. Like all that's really, really important. So like, you don't know who you're a protective factor for, and you don't know whose mind you sit in when they come into the office. For like with someone like me, they say, oh, who had your back as a kid? Man, this person that I was at my high school or whatever else, and the janitor or what, it don't matter who it is. Like, as long as you felt secure enough to be vulnerable, that makes a huge ass difference in somebody's mental health. So that's protective factors, y'all.
Right on. Man, well, look, man, I do want to be respectful of time. As always, man, we had a great dialogue tonight, man. And I know the unpacking for this episode is going to be off the chain. Specifically, I told JB this during the break, I'm going to circle back and have a conversation about that N-word and banning that. But did y'all have any other comments, man, related to tonight's dialogue before we wrap it up?
I would say I appreciate y'all, like having having community like this means a hell of a lot to me. So like, I really appreciate, like, you know, I talk about the internet and virtual shit, but like, it actually means a lot to have a group of like-minded brothers who just want to bat this shit around and feel like a sense of community with each other. So I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
Yep, ditto. Appreciate y'all. Like you, like Rodney, when you said earlier, like, man, I didn't know you was going through that. You was, you know, carrying that well and all of that. You know, having this, you know, and therapy, and you know, relationship with God, you know, and God bringing us together. Like Rodney, me and you met over the internet 3 years ago.
Man,
you know what I'm saying?
man,
God brought us together. You know,
Yep.
so
That's right.
you know, this
sure.
helped, and I know it's gonna help somebody else.
Yeah, right on. Hey, well, look, man, Brother Roper, definitely, man, you welcome anytime to come join us, man, and do these powwows with us, man. Definitely enjoyed having you tonight. Enjoyed having all of you brothers tonight, and man, we'll go ahead and take it home. I want to thank all of the viewers, all of the listeners for taking the time to tap in with us tonight on the Blacked Out Couch. Again, I think this was a great dialogue this evening, and I hate that we ran out of time like we always do, fellas, but I am looking forward to the unpacking follow-up session on Clubhouse next week. If you haven't already, make sure you do follow us on Clubhouse at Angela Marie Publishing, where we like to engage with our audience and the opposite panel as we break down these conversations a little bit more in depth. Until next time, peace, love, and blessings to all.